Of all Germany's aces, few can boast of belonging in the same class as the legendary Adolf Galland. His more than 100 victories against Western opponents are a testament to his bravery and skill as a pilot. However, his place in aviation history was earned with more than just the victory bars on the tail of his Me-109.
It was publicized that Udet had an accident by testing a new weapon. Yes, he tested a new weapon, but it was his pistol.
A general by the age of 29, he established himself as a leader through successful operations like the Channel Dash and through his willingness to take on the German leadership by championing the causes closest to him, his beloved fighter force and the German population, suffering the punishment of the Allied bombing raids. After the war, Galland would eventually return to his hometown of Remagen-Oberwinter, situated just south of Bonn and next to the Rhine River. In the early 1990s, Galland invited a camera crew into his home to discuss his personal recollections of World War II in a videotaped interview. Of all his missions, perhaps the one which best illustrates his bravado as a fighter ace occurred during an impromptu Spitfire battle on his way to deliver, of all things, a lobster dinner.
The picture you have with the two 109s, and I noticed they had an extra little addition to your plane, a basket of lobsters or something behind the armor plate. What is the story about that?
The story behind this is, in this time, our fighter commander, higher fighter commander, was in Le Touquet, General Osterkamp, World War I is. And he had birthday. And I decided to fly up with a number 2 in a 109, and I bought lobsters and oysters, which were very famous in Brest. Put them in a
basket of something.
A basket with some ice. I did not put champagne in it. Many times in newspapers you can read had lobster and champagne. Champagne would have exploded in altitude because we did not have
pressurization.
Delivering the birthday gift, Galland and his wingman Westphal took a detour over England so that the German ace might get in some shooting practice in his brand new Me-109. It was there that the duo encountered a formation of over 30 British aircraft on a training mission.
We were very fortunate this time because the English did believe they were between their own, there were no enemies in the air, and there were some Spitfires on training flights. They were playing around, some were making acrobatics. And I could manage to shoot down 3 of these poor planes. Which they never believed they were in combat before they were shot down.
Flying in a new 109 with a modified cockpit configuration, Galland inadvertently lowered his landing gear in the middle of battle.
There was a new Mach, and the installation in the cockpit was a little bit different. And in the last combat, I hit with my knee the bottom for the undercarriage. And the undercarriage came out. And I did not realize this. So I had to escape because I was followed by some Spitfires which were not in agreement with me. Since I had realized I did some damage to them, they were following me, and I had the undercarriage out with full power down to sea level and then to Le Touquet. And in Le Touquet, I did not realize I had the undercarriage out. I pushed the button, the undercarriage went in. I turned around, and they were firing signals. I thought, what is going on there?
Big birthday party.
because they didn't make around, had always the wrong decision made. When I was in the final approach, the undercarriage I took in, and when I had to go around, I put it out again. So finally, they came and showed me a tire. I said, something's going on with your undercarriage. Then I made it correctly.
Oh, good.
So I could offer Osterkampf the lobsters and
The oysters. And 3 Spitfires.
And 3 Spitfires.
Wonderful.
All in all, Galland would tally up 100 kills, including 31 Hurricanes and 47 Spitfires on his more than 400 missions. Though impressive when compared with the top British and American aces hovering at or near 40 victories, his totals might seem modest, considering some German pilots had more than 300 kills. The great discrepancy in totals begs the question, how were the Luftwaffe pilots racking up so many more victories?
There's a very good reason for this, because we had a complete different system to use our pilots. Germany was a poor people. Military-wise, we were very, very poor. We didn't have the aircraft, we did not have the pilot schools, we did not have the teachers, we did not have the fuel later on. So we were always very short in replacements. Mechanical replacement and personal replacement. And we had to use our pilots from the first day up to the last, or up to the day they could still even fly. The Americans, and I think in some way also the English, they had a system where they got points.
Yes, that's right. A certain number of missions or a certain number of hours,
Yeah.
then you went back to some other non-combat job for a while and then possibly came back to combat later.
Yeah. In Germany, we have many pilots which have more than 1,000 military missions, war missions. More than 1,000. It's unbelievable. I personally have 400 or something like this. It's not very much. And when you were fighting this time, you were, of course, an expert in fights. Also, but I remember that everywhere, in all fronts, even over Germany, we had such an amount of enemy aircraft in the air all the time. It was unbelievable.
Galland's many victories would bring him countless awards and honors. He became a favorite of Hitler's and a poster boy for the Luftwaffe. On one occasion, Hitler went so far as to censor a portrait of Galland to keep the ACES image untarnished.
Adolfo, this excellent portrait you have here, would you tell us something about it?
Yes, of course. The story behind is as following. In my wing, 26, Schlaggater, was based in Düsseldorf, the wing. And Düsseldorf is known as town with portrait artists. The best we had in Germany were housed in Düsseldorf. So in the beginning of the war, the year 1940, during the Battle of Britain, the town of Düsseldorf has ordered this portrait by an artist with the name Pöten, Leo Pöten. Very nice, sympathetic, and capable man. And he made this portrait. I told him I will not stand there for hours. So I had my best man, who had the same figure, put him my uniform on, and he was sitting there instead of me. I have only sat for 2 hours or so. And then there was an art exposition in Munich, in the German Museum, And when Hitler saw this portrait, he said, very nice, but no way to show it like it is. This man should be an example for our youngsters, and he is smoking a cigar. Impossible. So that was his critique on it. And the town Düsseldorf has ordered immediately a new portrait of mine.
Did they ever consider just painting out the cigar instead of
No,
doing another
they immediately have ordered a new portrait
full
from
portrait.
the same artist. After the war, I was informed by somebody who came from the town of Düsseldorf that the two portraits in stock, and I could get them, but I should pay a little amount, not as much as they have paid for it. So for 100 marks, I got each of the two portraits, and they are now in my house.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Some of Galland's greatest victories came in the Battle of Britain, where he shot down 33 aircraft and took the lead amongst all ACES. The Battle of Britain was in a way a changing of the guard for the Luftwaffe. It saw Goring promote two of his aces, Galland and Werner Mulders, to the position of wing commander, in the hopes of instilling the fighter force with a modern perspective on air-to-air combat.
In the beginning of the Battle of Britain, Goring has changed this. He understood that the elder generation, which were at this time, we were 25, 26 years old, and they were 15 years older, and they were the commanders. Goring understood that this was wrong. So Mulders and myself, we were the first younger wing commanders of the younger generation. Mulders did like it very, very much. He wanted to be the forthcoming Bölke. He told me once, you can be the next Richthofen by shooting down only with your stupid head. I wanted to be a Bölke, the thinker, the tactician.
Tactician.
Mulders would live his dream of becoming a grand tactician of the air. With his help, the modern finger four formation was adopted by the Luftwaffe. Up until then, the German fighters largely used the limited, close formation style popular in World War I.
We started with the four-finger
Yes.
open formation. We learned this in Spain. And this was the merit of Mulders, who has invented this. In a close formation, only the leader can see. All the other people, all the other pilots are completely occupied by holding their position, their close position. It was stupid.
Though led by prolific aces like Mulders and Galland in the Battle of Britain, the Luftwaffe pilots were still handicapped by the German architects of the invasion. The planners sent their pilots to war in aircraft with barely enough range to reach their British foes.
In the Battle of Britain itself, though, you couldn't go very deep into England because of the lack of range of the Messerschmitts. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. We had 1 hour flight time, and we could reach just London and stay over London for about 5 minutes or 7 minutes, and then we had to turn back because we had to take altitude. And the incursion we made were mostly about around 20,000 feet.
When the Luftwaffe fighters did cross the Channel with what little fuel they had in reserve, the dense English radar system ensured they would be greeted with a hostile welcome.
When we took off in this area where the fighter places, we were immediately detected by the English radar. And our radar was just in the beginning, it was neglected. We did not have a very good radar system. But we learned very soon that the English radar system was just perfect. And nevertheless, we neglected to attack the system and to destroy the system. We have only made, I think, 2 attacks on the English radar. This was one of the mistakes. The radar organization was around here. They had different sectors. And this organization was extremely good. Thank you.
Perhaps the greatest challenges to the Luftwaffe during the Battle of Britain were the RAF pilots themselves, who were determined to repel the invaders and preserve their homeland.
How did you feel about the British as opponents in the war, the RAF?
They were very serious opponents. We know this. Mm-hmm. And at this time, the English fighter pilots were I would say, the best fighter pilots. They were equal with our own. And their spirit to fight was very, very high. So we had the highest respect.
If you knew who you were, who was up there against you, did you think, oh, I've got Barter out there right now? Was it like that? Could you actually say to yourself at that moment, there is a man out there I know by name and I want to get him?
No, we couldn't. We couldn't determine it in the air who was sitting in the plane. Never. And we had all our victory bars on the tail. This would not be recognizable in the air. Absolutely not.
After a string of resounding victories in mainland Europe, the Luftwaffe found themselves in a new and vulnerable position in the Battle of Britain. Though they faced logistical problems and stiff opposition, it did not deaden the spirit of the German fighter force.
I would say the morale at this time on both sides was extremely high. Extremely high. We wanted to fight them, they wanted to fight us. There was no any opportunity to escape the fight, and there was nobody who wanted to escape.
Hermann Goring had promoted Galland to the position of wing commander, but this did not stop the young ace from publicly sparring with his superior about the deficiencies of the Luftwaffe. Galland recalled a tense dispute when Goring blamed the fighters for failing to sacrifice themselves to save his more costly bombers.
Our bombers and Goring himself, they have ordered us to stay with the bombers at the same altitude, at the same speed, and as close as possible. I said they wanted to have a little German fighter hanging on their wing. This could not be done by us because we were far below our cruising speed. The bombers were slow in formation. They had a lot of bombs hanging outside. This has lowered their speed also. And in addition, they were trying to go higher than their best altitude because of the English anti-aircraft. And the 109, with their high wing load, they needed speed. And the Spitfire, with lower wing load, could even slow down more. When I explained this to Goring, he came once to the channel. In this area there was a tunnel. He came with a special train, and he ordered Mölders and myself to come. And he came out of his train, and in front of the train he blamed us for half an hour for not performing the escort. And I told him, when we slow down to the bomber speed, then we are only targets for the English fighters. We cannot maneuver. And Goring said, when you will be shot down, this is better than my expensive bombers were shot down. When he said this, I was annoyed, terrible.
I'm not surprised.
And finally Goring, after 40 minutes blaming, he asked Möllers, what can I do for your wing to improve the fighting capability, especially for escort? Möllers answered, I wanted to have the more powerful engines, the same engine with a higher compression.
Compression ratio, yes.
And Goring said to his aide, take a note, he will get this engine first. Then he asked me, and I was still annoyed. And I said, I looked at him, that's a fat man in front of me. I said, please, Herr Reichsmarschall, equip my wing with Spitfires. Boom.
Was that the start of the deterioration?
That was the story. He did not expect this. He couldn't say a word. He was standing there for a minute, and then he turned around and stamped back to his train. So I was expecting punishment, but I didn't get it.
Didn't get the Spitfire?
I didn't get the Spitfires.
No Spitfires either.
Soon the Luftwaffe turned their attention from Britain to the Eastern Front as Hitler initiated Operation Barbarossa. In history's most massive military operation, 4.5 million German and Axis troops, over 4,000 tanks and 4,000 aircraft invaded the Soviet Union along a 2,900-kilometer border. Early on, the Luftwaffe fighters ballooned their totals as they feasted on the less experienced Russian fighters.
The revolution in victories came up, I call it the revolution. It was when the Russians front were opened. There was such a terrible amount of aircraft they were bringing into the air. Unexperienced pilots also, very, very unexperienced. And inflation, well, it was an inflation on the numbers. Inflation on victories when we started the Russian war. And from then on, the numbers were going up. Many people reached 100 and more victories. But this didn't change the situation.
I think only you and Marseille had more than 100 in the Western Front only, didn't you?
Oh, there are a few more.
Few more?
Few more.
I know those two of the you two of the men.
But the big numbers were, of course,
all in the Russian front.
All in the Russian front. The Russians have improved later on, technically and tactically, and in experience also. Mm-hmm. They gained. They made up the difference. But it was still easier to shoot down a Russian plane instead of an American or English plane.
As Luftwaffe aces racked up greater and greater total victories, it became necessary to adjust the point system for coveted awards, like the Knight's Cross.
In the beginning, 20 victories in the West were compared with the Iron Cross. Later on, 50. My brother did have 57 when he was awarded with the Knight's Cross.
There were doubts and suspicions amongst the members of Allied air forces that the Germans were embellishing their totals. Galland quickly discounted any of these rumors.
Some people believe the Americans. American fighters, which were here in our meeting, our annual meeting, they put this question. They did believe we were counting 3 or 4 victories for an American 4-engine bomber shot down. That is absolutely wrong. A victory is a victory, but for the awards, the value of a victory was different. A Russian fighter plane, single-engine fighter plane, was one victory for the decoration, but to be compared with the American 4-engine bomber shot down out of a bomber formation. This was a value of 3 or 4 later.
That must be how that rumor got started. It was not victories they were counting, they were just counting points toward awards. And that makes good sense because it's much more daring to difficult to go in a
much
big,
more dangerous.
much more dangerous to go in a formation like that.
Though Barbarossa was initially a success and the Soviet Air Force was quickly devoured by the Germans, one of the Luftwaffe leaders, Ernst Udet, fell under the pressures of his daunting assignment.
And it was publicized that Udet had an accident by testing a new weapon. Yes, he tested a new weapon, but it was his pistol. But we knew when the funeral took place, we knew already. Goring had told us what has gone on.
November the 22nd, 1941, the day of Udet's funeral, was doubly tragic for the Luftwaffe and for Galland. Werner Mulders, the young ace who had quickly risen up the ranks side by side with Galland, died in a tragic plane accident.
He was ordered to come to the state funeral of Udet. But he couldn't make it on behalf of bad weather. And then he got the message he should stay there. He was on the Crimea. And he did a lot of shooting and hunting there.
Then he got, was he killed in an accident or?
No, yeah, coming. And he came in a 111, in a Heinkel bomber, which were going home for the general overhaul. And it was bad weather, and Mulders was flying as passenger. He was not in the cockpit. He was behind the crew. And they had to they lost their engine, and they were flying for an hour with one engine, and then they had to make a forced landing in Breslau, in Silesia. And this landing, the pilot, who was an experienced pilot from the Spanish Civil War already, he overshot the runway on a small field, and when he took off, he
rolled over.
He came down.
Shortly before his death, Mulders was promoted to Inspector General of the fighters. Galland feared he might be next in line for this position, as it would take him out of the air and away from his beloved squadron. His fears became a reality when Goring forced the promotion onto him at Mulders' funeral.
This series of photos were taken at my wing headquarters by the end of 41, when I was made General of Fighter Arms. Goring came on and delivered a speech.
That's a good shot.
He is delivering his speech. By the way, I can tell you, when you see the flag, this was the flag of the forces. It has nothing to do with the party.
Oh, it's a military flag.
It's a military flag.
Yes, it's not a political flag at all.
The German soldier, professional soldier, was not allowed to vote.
Oh.
It was not allowed to be voted, to be selected.
Oh, just totally out of politics.
Out of politics.
You took over as General of Fighters. You were only 29, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a tremendous responsibility for such a young man to take over the entire Luftwaffe fighter command.
As you know, Mulders was the first one. And at the funeral of Mulders, on his open grave, Goring did promote me to fighter general. I didn't like this, first this location, and secondly, I didn't like to be put under such responsibility. I wanted to keep going on as wing commander. I was very happy with this mission. but there was no question to avoid this. You are the fighter general from now on.
Did you have responsibility for both day fighters and night fighters?
In the beginning, not.
No.
In the beginning, only for day fighters, and I can tell you this was enough. It was really enough.
I'm sure.
We had so many problems with personnel, with the losses we had, with the wounded people, the replacement of military leaders, fighter leaders, wing commanders, group commanders, squadron leaders. It was enormous.
As a kind of consolation for his promotion, Hitler awarded Galland with the jewels to the Knight's Cross. Mulders, the only other recipient, had received this highest of honours after 100 victories. Though Galland had only 94 kills, Hitler did not want him denied this award as a result of taking a bureaucratic position. Galland recalls how both Goring and Hitler, though running a war on two fronts, were preoccupied with the cut and size of his diamonds.
When I was wearing this first time, Goring saw it. It was in his special train on a trip to the Ukraine, to his headquarters there. He asked me, tell me, is this the highest decoration the Führer gave you, the diamonds? To the Knight's Cross? I said, yes. It can't be. Take it off. I took it off. I had it fixed with some
Ribbon or
strips from the girls. And I gave it to him, and he said, this is impossible. You know what these are. These are not diamonds. These are only splinters, poor splinters. And this cannot be awarded as highest German decoration. It's impossible. I must talk to Hitler about it. And give it to me. I will let you make for my jeweler in Berlin a new set. I have some stock of diamonds there, good diamonds, and you can see what the difference is. Some weeks later, I was ordered to see Goring in his house near Berlin, and he said, now I can give you the diamonds like I call diamonds. And he showed me this in one hand, his edition, in the other hand, Hitler's first edition. I said, can you see the difference? I said, yes, I can see it. He put it against the light like so. Then he must have talked to Hitler, because some weeks later I was ordered to see Hitler in his headquarters. And Hitler said, finally, my dear Galland, I am in a position to award you now with the highest German decoration. What you are wearing up to now is only an interim solution. Can you take it off? And I had, not knowing what was going on, I had the Goring set on. He took the Goring set in one hand, his new set in the other hand, put it to the light and said, can you see the difference? These are splinters, the Goring one. And they were far bigger. But he didn't realize this. Goring said, this is typical for Hitler, because he knows any caliber of any battleship to the German fleet and the English fleet. He knows every caliber and every trajectory, but about diamonds, he has no understanding at all.
Now General of the Fighters, Galland was in an almost purely advisory bureaucratic position. He was, however, on rare occasions, asked to take command of specific operations. In February of 1942, Hitler charged him with overseeing the escort responsibilities of one of the boldest naval maneuvers of World War II. The fates of fighter ace Adolf Galland and Germany were bound together during the start of World War II. Both enjoyed great successes in the initial campaigns. Germany quickly stormed across Western Europe, consuming nation after nation, and Galland became a living legend of the air and a hero for Germany as he added victories to his resume. During the Battle of Britain, Galland took the lead amongst aces and was promoted to the position of wing commander, along with his fellow ace Werner Mulders. But here, Germany's torrid progress to expand its military empire stalled. The fierce resistance they faced from the RAF, combined with the ineptitude of the Luftwaffe's high command, poisoned Germany's conquest of Britain. Hitler turned his attention to the Eastern Front, and although Operation Barbarossa was initially successful, Galland and the Luftwaffe faced tragedy: the suicide of Ernst Udet and the accidental death of Werner Mulders. At this time, Adolf Galland found himself in an unhappy position, as he was forced to take mantle of General of the Fighters from fallen ace and friend Mulders. However, in this new role, Galland would soon find himself in Hitler's inner circle, planning a top-secret mission, Operation Thunderbolt, the Channel Dash.
Hitler had led this meeting by himself, and he said he wanted to have the capital shifts in Norway because he was of the opinion that the English would recapture Norway. And he wanted to avoid this in any case.
For Hitler, holding on to Norway was a key to the success of Operation Barbarossa. If the Allies established a foothold there, then Germany would have yet another front with which to contend. At the time, the region was largely undefended, as troops and aircraft were mired in battle with the Soviets. Sailing his navy, stationed at Brest, to Norway was a stopgap measure to prevent an Allied invasion.
Hitler, he said he knew that this operation would be extremely dangerous, but all his actions in the last years before the war and during the war had been very dangerous, so he was decided to make this operation. The question was only, should the ships go around England or should they go through the Channel? Both ways were really risky because the way around England would have involved the whole English fleet, which was high superior with Navy and also with the Air Force on the ships. So it was decided finally to go through the Channel.
Sailing the German warships through the English Channel might have avoided a direct confrontation with the British home fleet, but it was still a treacherous path. The Germans would still have to contend with British coastal gun batteries, as well as attacks by the ever-alert RAF. The entire operation was a calculated gamble for Hitler.
Hitler had finished. He took me aside and talked to me and said, "Do you believe this operation can be successfully performed?" And I answered my Führer, "This will depend completely from the surprise. The preparation must be taken 100% secret, then it can happen. A lot will depend from the weather, but most will depend from the surprise." And Hitler said, "Okay, this is good. We will go ahead."
Hitler entrusted Galland with command of the fighters for this bold naval operation. His fighter force would play a pivotal role escorting and shielding the German ships from RAF strikes. As well, the German ace was asked to select a name for the secret mission, a decision which irked the proud Kriegsmarine commanders.
One thing which was something ridiculous on the whole story, there should be invented a name for this operation, a camouflage name. And I was asked, and I said Donnerkeil, because Donnerkeil in German means something like, what is it?
Thunderbolt?
No, not at all. But as a wondering, if you know something but you didn't believe, you said Donnerkeil. Donnerkeil, what an operation.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. It means thunderbolt. And the Navy decided not to have the same nickname because they didn't like it. It was invented by a fighter pilot, a young fighter pilot, and they will never take what a young fighter pilot suggests. So they said Cerberus. And it did turn out that the difference in the two camouflage names did work very well. The English side, the English Secret Service, did believe these were two different operations. And this was in favor of us.
Oh, yeah, help with the surprise.
Was helpful.
Engaged in a war on the Eastern Front, only about 250 German fighters were available to form a shield to protect the German fleet during its Channel dash. To maintain continuous protection, fighter units of 16 would be sent over the fleet for 35-minute shifts. Training for the mission went on with the utmost secrecy.
The German fighter commanders didn't know what was going on. They didn't know about the escape of the ships. They were informed we would make a limited offensive operation. So they knew it only on the same morning when the ships during the night had been gone out.
On February the 11th, 1942, Operation Thunderbolt commenced under the cloak of darkness. All through the night and into the morning, the German fleet and their fighter escort slipped along the channel unnoticed.
The German fighters had to fly as long as possible in low level in order not to be detected by the English radar. And our commander of the communications, who had below his command the radar organization, he used at the first time a system which did camouflage the fleet and which did give the English impression that a big incursion was coming on. And this system has worked very, very well. English radar was completely confused.
It wasn't until 1100 hours the following day that the British forces spotted the German warships. More than 2 hours later, the first RAF planes, Fairey Swordfish torpedo bombers, arrived on the scene. These sluggish British biplanes were soon devoured by the German fighter force.
The first which did attack us were this hopefully inferior biplanes.
Small biplane, yes.
Biplanes. They were very, very brave. They were shot down 100%. The fighters did an extremely fine job at the day.
Wave after wave of British fighters and bombers attacked the German fleet and its shield of fighters. But on this day, Germany would have her way. Operation Thunderbolt was almost a complete success. The fleet arrived with minimal casualties and damage.
Did you meet with Hitler afterwards to discuss the success of it?
No. But I was made general very soon.
That's better than talking to him, isn't it?
Without bringing this together with this operation. Because this operation was only, to a certain extent, a success for the Germans. The passage was a success, but the fact we had to escape from Brest was negative. And
so he didn't want to publicize the fact that they had to abandon the base. I see.
I think we shot down about 60, 65 English planes the day. We had 18 losses. But in total, for me, it was a wonderful operation.
Though a successful military operation, the tides of war would soon turn against Germany. The Channel Dash was meant to safeguard Operation Barbarossa, but the Soviet Union's harsh winter and fierce soldiers proved to be even greater foes than Hitler anticipated. In the winter of 1942, while Germany was embroiled in the Battle of Stalingrad, Galland met with General Jeschonnek, the Luftwaffe's Chief of Staff, to discuss Germany's grim fate.
General Jeschonnek, this was a man who, even he was a follower of Hitler, but you could talk against Hitler with him. That was possible. So only of the few people who could do this. We could do this. And when in 1942 we, the Germans, had in mind to make the decisive offensive against Moscow and other towns, Stalingrad and the Crimea. But the weather has not allowed to make a bigger offensive, has delayed these preparations terribly, and the Russians did start their offensive. And in this occasion, all fighter schools, fighter reserves, what we had, they were closed and everything was directed against Russia.
Against the East, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was used. And I talked to Jeschonnek in this occasion and I said, this is the end. What can we do next year? And he said, don't take care of this. When we lose this offensive in the spring, the war is lost. So we talked about losing the war, and one thing was terrible. There was the conditions in which the war could be ended. This was the unconditional surrender as only outcome of the war.
To compound Germany's problems, Allied bombers soon devastated cities like Hamburg in massive night bombing raids. They were able to counter the obsolete German night fighter and searchlight system by sending in single streams of bombers and dropping countermeasures to fool the enemy radar.
General Kammhuber was a man who was responsible for the night fighters. And he had his special system. He had the circle of one radar. He had one fighter, and this fighter was leaded against the target. But when Hamburg occurred, and your bomber command did make first this air stream of bombers, together with the strips, with
the window or chaff.
Window chaps. His system was completely out. And the night fighters, also at this time, they wanted to follow the bomber stream in the night because they could see them. Many times they could see them, and they saw the signals they were dropping. They saw the burning bombers in the stream. So they could easily follow over the target. Everything was
light because of the fire.
Lighting, of course, the fire. Of course, the pharaohs.
Searchlights, yes.
Searchlights. Yes. And they couldn't understand. They were forced to stay in a circle.
Frustrated by General Kammhuber's ineffectual system, the night fighter force turned to Galland to intervene.
They came to me, and I had to tell this Goring. And after Hamburg, when this system with the circles did completely fail, he made me responsible for the night fighters too. I didn't understand very much. I have only some night missions done in the second seat of a night fighter. But I personally have not shot down one aircraft during the night time.
It's a whole different situation at night.
Completely different. But I had, as my inspector of the night fighters, I had an expert who knew this and who explained this to me. So I think the night fighters themselves, they were more or less happy to be under my command. Not so with Kammerer. Kammerer did believe I had originated his replacement.
He must have known that it had failed, though, and because it didn't stop the attacks, and when you took over, things got a lot better.
But that was the only answer to the new British night tactics.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. While the British devastated Germany through the night, the Americans took part in their own precision daylight bombing raids, crushing Germany's infrastructure. Hermann Goring, looking for a scapegoat for his own chaotic management of the Luftwaffe, criticized Galland and his fighter force for failing to repel the American bombers.
I was, unfortunately, present at a meeting when Goring in Schleißheim, near Munich, had a meeting for about 35 high-ranking German officers. And he was upset about the last encounter with the American ACES bomber fleet. And he was blaming the fighter for not performing the escort during the Battle of Britain, not performing now to stop the American air offensive. And he did blame us, and he did call us scopegates, and I don't know what else. And when he said, your people have got so high awards during the Battle of Britain for the victories you have not really made. You have only you were lying on this. Oh. And when he said this, I took my decoration and hit it on the table in front of him. There was a silence, absolute silence there. Even Goring couldn't say any word. And he finished very soon this meeting, took me out and said, please don't do this, please don't do this. I was nervous, and this is not my opinion. And I said, I will never wait until you extend a declaration that this is not true and this is not your opinion. He didn't do so. So I took all my decorations off, and in my office at this time was in the Olympic game stadium.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
And there was an office, and this was my office for the wartime. I had my part of my trophies there, this wooden cock, the big cock I had there, and I put the last decoration I put around the neck of one wooden cock, a blue, dark blue neck, and I put 2 lights on it. And everybody who came wanted to see the wooden cock with the diamonds, and I showed him this to this. They did fit him wonderfully. So then one day Hitler had seen a photo of mine in a German newspaper on the cover front, very big picture without decoration. And he asked, what is going on? No, before he did this, my quarters was bombed, the Olympic game field. It was bombed, and the decoration and everything, my complete office, did burn up. So, and Hitler did ask his surroundings, what is the reason why Galland is not wearing the highest decoration? And they told him that has been burned in the Olympic sporting game. Yeah. By an English air attack, night attack. And he said he should come see me. I have a new set for him. And I went up without decoration, and he gave me number 4.
In addition to the military losses suffered by the Luftwaffe fighter force, Galland suffered personal tragedies, the deaths of 2 of his brothers, fellow pilots Wilhelm Ferdinand Galland and Paul Galland.
This picture down below here, these are your two brothers.
Yeah.
And they were both lost in the war, is that correct?
Yes. The little one was killed first. So there was a little attack on Canterbury, and he was escorting fighter bombers, 109 fighter bombers. And on the way back, they were attacked by Spitfires. And he climbed into the clouds. And since he couldn't fly by instruments, he came out immediately from the clouds, and they were in the middle of the Spitfires. And was shot down. He's laying here in his channel.
How many victories did he have before?
Yeah, 17.
17.
And he was only 23 years when he died.
And your other brother?
My other brother was 2 years elder. 3 years elder. And he had a very good talent as a fighter pilot. He had difficulties in the beginning, but he was a perfect fighter and a very good group commander. And he had 57 victories between these 7 4-engine bombers, B-17s. And he was very talented, very good.
He must have been. That was an impressive number of victories at that time.
Very good group commander. He had the Night Cross also.
With each passing day, the outlook became more hopeless for Germany as they battled the Soviets and faced the punishment of the American and British bombing campaign. But did Galland, a living legend of the air and general of the fighters, believe his pilots could somehow change the outcome of the war?
You may ask me, did you believe you could change the war? Not at all. The war was completely lost. The war was lost when we started the offensive against Russia.
Yes.
Perhaps the war was lost when Hitler started it. Because the Americans, the Russians, and the Catholic Church as enemy, and you are lost. You can be sure. And the British. Oh, sorry.
What kept you fighting after you really knew that the war could not be won?
We were fighting for anything better than unconditional surrender. And we thought there must be a chance, perhaps, that England and the Americans are going against Russia or something like this.
Galland and his pilots also continued to fight to defend Germany's helpless civilian population as best they could from the relentless bombing raids. The general of the fighters believed the Me-262, a jet fighter with a maximum speed of over 500 miles an hour, was the ideal interceptor to counter these attacks.
We had now the first and the best jet fighter in our hands. The terrible attacks of the American Air Force, of the 8th Air Force, the 15th Air Force, and the English Air Force during the night, the Bomber Command, they were going on. The German population, the losses were so high that we couldn't say we don't fight anymore, even if we knew the war is lost. And the chances that we can change anything, they are about zero. Only for the feeling when the population is suffering in such a terrible way, and we have a good weapon, we have to continue to fight, and we did it.
To protect the population, Galland advocated building up a huge reserve of fighters and striking the Allied bombers in an operation known as the Große Schlag, or the Big Blow. By downing as many bombers as possible in a massive strike, he hoped to stall the American attacks, at least temporarily. But Hitler, focused on offense, squandered Galland's reserves. It was the same preoccupation with offense which led Hitler to order the Me-262 to be modified into a fast bomber.
I have fought for the 262 since I had flown it first in 1943. Hitler had little bit later, already ordered this plane should be used as a fast bomber, as a blitz bomber only. And he said, I will fight the forthcoming invasion with this plane. Nobody of you has seen this possibility. We knew that this plane would be a terrible bad fast bomber. It would have been an excellent fighter, especially against the American day bombing offensive with the four-engine bombers.
Hitler's decision to convert the 262 into a Blitz bomber ultimately slowed the development and production of one of Germany's most advanced and deadly weapons. However, this was not the only time Hitler meddled directly with the 262's design.
He has ordered a 5.5 centimeter cannon, tank cannon, to be installed in the Messerschmitt 262. It was sticking out about
Looked like a
3 feet sticking out from the front.
looked like a swordfish. Yes.
Yeah. And when you could only shoot bum, bum, bum. And every time when you made a shot, the plane was shaking like this.
Galland, focused on defending the civilian population, continued to push for the Me-262 to be used as an interceptor. His single-minded advocacy of this cause and his open opposition to the orders of the Luftwaffe's high command landed him in hot water with Goring.
He finally was so annoyed that Goring extended the order. The plane should never be mentioned as a fighter, as an interceptor. Never. He gave an order not to use this expression anymore. So, and I continued fighting for this until I was replaced. I was fired as general of the fighter arm. This was in December 44, 5 months before the war ended. And Goring had in mind to make me responsible for the defeat of the fighter arm. And he was preparing a
Court-martial.
court-martial. And Speer, I could manage to get Speer involved. Speer informed about my situation. And Speer, in the same night when he got this message, went to Hitler in his quarter and informed Hitler. And Hitler said, this should be, all actions against Galland should be stopped immediately. For me, it is absolutely clear Goring wants to have a scapegoat. He is giving the fault to another man like he is doing this normally. So it was stopped. And then Hitler extended the order. I should set up a small formation and give the proof that this plane could be used as an interceptor. Very well.
Galland's reinstatement as a frontline commander may have been a way for his enemies in the Luftwaffe to hasten his death. As well, perhaps as a symbol of Goering's irritation with Galland, the German ace was forbidden from attaching his name to the new jet unit.
Goering ordered me this formation should not carry my name, should not be named Jagdgeschwader Galland. And he asked me, what do you propose as name for it? I said, JV44. JV stands for Jagdverband 44, true force, because it was in the end of 44, and I thought I will never get more than 4 and 4, 8 planes. And also, there's a joke in Germany, a 4 is a Vierer. A Vierer sounds very familiar with Führer. I said, let's now try with 2 Vierer. With one fear, it doesn't work anymore. This time is too fear.
Galland was able to hand-select the men of the JV-44, including pilots who had taken part in the mutiny of the fighters, men who had supported his reinstatement as general and were critical of the decisions of the Luftwaffe High Command. It was a star-studded group. His top 5 aces had more than 1,000 combined kills.
I could take over as pilots, men like Steinhoff, like Hohagen, Kupinski, and others, which were involved in this fighter mutiny, which had taken place in between. You can have all these men, Goring told me. You can have all these men. And then we have set up this formation in Brandenburg-Brest near Berlin. Steiner was the man who was responsible for the operation and for the training. And we went down to Munich, to the former airport from Munich, München, and we have operated the last 6 weeks from this airport. With quite a success, we have shot down a total of 50 airplanes.
Though the JV-44 enjoyed some success as a unit, they could not stop the inevitable defeat of Germany. However, if the Me-262 had not been delayed by indecision over its role as a fighter or bomber, might it have had an impact on the outcome of the war?
What do you think would have been the effect of having the Messerschmitt 262 available as a fighter 6 or 8, 10 months earlier?
We could have had it. The development has been stopped by Hitler himself in one situation when he said, all developments which are not ready for use in combat during the next 8 months have to be stopped, have to be postponed. This has delayed the further development of the 262, especially of the engines. But they have continued against the order of Hitler, but only with the limited force. And we could have had the 262 available in numbers of about, let's say, 500 up to 1,000 a year before. It was my firm opinion. And with this force being used only as interceptors, we would have stopped the American day offensive. That's for true.
Yes, I've heard that from the American side too, that devastating attacks, and they couldn't stop them.
I'm completely convinced we could not be stopped. And the losses would have been so heavy on the other side, on the American side, that they had to break, they had to finish this. Perhaps they had to go in bad weather or in the night, to the night. But since we didn't have it, it didn't occur. And the result, if we would have stopped the day offensive, would have been negative. This would not have mean we would have won the war. It was too late.
It would have extended it, probably, wouldn't it?
This would have extended the war. The Americans were already in Europe. The invasion had taken place. This would have extended the war and would have delayed the advantage of the Western Allies. And the Russians would have come in from the east more and more and would have occupied more European territories, which would have been even worse.
Much worse in the long run.
With Hitler weighing in on so many key decisions regarding the 262 and the Luftwaffe, one has to wonder how much he was personally responsible for the downfall of the German Air Force.
Adolfo, how much of a handicap or problem to the Luftwaffe was Hitler's lack of understanding of air power and the use of air power?
This was of the highest importance because he did not understand what was going on. Hitler's thinking was only aggressive. He could only follow the bomber. tactics. He didn't know what it means, air superiority. He never understood this. What he was saying, his own words was, attacks can only be counterattacked by attacks. Bombs against bombs. Not fighters, not anti-aircraft against bombers.
It's sort of like an American saying that the best defense is a good offense.
Yeah.
Very much the same thought.
But he did this all the time without any reserves, and unfortunately, he was even with his military decision, he was successful in the beginning.
So it gave him a false sense of confidence.
Not all, but
not all, but some,
all.
Yes.
But in the beginning, even Hitler himself, he did believe he could. His orders were also coming with a positive outcome, and this has led to many mistakes later on. In combination with his offensive thinking. Normally, a normal tactician would build the Air Force only under the cover of air defense. But no, not so with Hitler. He built first the air offensive, the bombers, and neglected the fighters.
The chaotic management of Germany's Luftwaffe and armed forces would ultimately lead to her demise. Though the war was lost, Galland was still eager to make an impact on Germany's fate. He attempted to negotiate a deal with the Americans, which would have allowed the JV-44 to continue fighting against the Russians. His proposal, however, was quickly rejected, and out of options, Galland surrendered to the American Army on VE Day. Unquestionably, Galland was a gifted fighter pilot and one of the great aces of World War II. However, his impact as general of the fighters is debatable. Other than the Channel Dash, the only operation he commanded was an unsuccessful attempt to reverse the fates of the fighter force in Sicily. What we can be certain of was Galland's devotion to his fighter force and to the German people. He was willing to stand up to the Luftwaffe's high command, lock horns with Goring, and oppose Hitler for the sake of these two causes. Perhaps these actions speak more to his bravery and valor than the victories which earned him a diamond-encrusted Knight's Cross.
Luftwaffe Gruppen Commander Gunther Roll, the third highest scoring ace in history, led his Me-109s and Focke-Wulf 190s against the Allied bombers and fighters. For Roll, it would be a fateful day.